Hey there, thanks for sticking around, and I'm really excited to get to today's episode. It's all about accountants getting overworked and underpaid and how to fix it. So, accountants don't get overworked because they take on too much clients, they get overworked because they underprice their value. I know this because I did it myself. And today we're breaking down why so many of us small firm accountants, especially when we're doing compliance work, grind harder than we have to, and how we can stop undercharging for what we actually deliver to our clients. So, let me tell you about a time that I gave away thousands of dollars in advisory work for free. So, I had a client, strictly compliance work, tax prep, bookkeeping, nothing fancy. And mind you, this is I won't get into too much details about the client, but they had, hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in retained earnings. So we accountants know what that means. That's sitting there. They've already paid taxes on it. We already did the strategies, so it's not a matter of they don't have the money to pay for it. We had our delivery call scheduled to talk about the tax return results, and I thought it would be just, a normal passage of, hey, this is what you owe, this is what your balance is, this is what you made, here's your cash flow statement, whatever. And they didn't ask a single thing about their returns because they knew you did it right. You got me paying the right amount. We're doing the strategies you told me about. Everything looks good. Instead, all they wanted to talk about was future planning. And this was when I was compliance only. I said, well, wait, this conversation is, valuable. We talked about retirement accounts. We talked about setting up different entity structures and other things, setting up other investments. So I was literally sitting there mapping out with them the next 2 to 3 years of their life, financially, strategizing tax planning, investments, just overall their structure, and didn't even think to say, this is advisory work. This is a separate service. Let's sell it this way. Nope, just gave it all away. Right? And what happened was, I started looking at other accountants and how they package their stuff, how they deliver certain things, and it started to sound familiar. Like I do that stuff. I did that with such and such client. And I finally brought up the idea, and then it's a whole learning curve of like, how do I implement it? How do I sell it? How do I package it? So with this client, I said, let me try something. Let me just try to, switch them over to like an advisory package. Of course the price would go up from what they were paying for. They were just paying for tax prep and, bookkeeping. And guess what? Client didn't want to make the switch, right? They don't all work out that way. And what I realized was I failed to educate them. And part of it was that they were kind of, against the change, which happens when, a lot of people are used to dealing with kind of the status quo accounting firms structure. You do our taxes, you have that, delivery, maybe 1 or 2 calls a year, and you maybe have a slight bump in fees, whatever, but they're not charging. It's not like, oh, here's this advisory level service that we should be offering you. Factor both of those things in. Me running a compliance only firm, trying to transition, not knowing how to package, not knowing how to sell it, and then the client just being, in their own mindset about how this relationship should work. So they didn't understand the difference between planning and compliance, an advisor and a preparer, a strategist and a preparer, somebody just doing your taxes. So a one-time tax return versus year-round access can have tremendous value, whether we're having hour-long phone calls every month or just when the time is right. Sometimes they need things like ancillary stuff, like they're working on buying property, they're working on getting a property, a loan, some type of equipment financing, whatever it is in their business. And that requires some time from you and me, the accountant. We need a copy of the tax return, but we also need you to kind of explain this to everybody because you're the only one that knows it, right? So once I started to realize that a handful of my compliance only clients were actually getting high level advisory services from me for free, it all kind of clicked. So if you're starting or growing your own accounting firm and you want to build a business that works for you on your terms, you're in the right place. Every week, we'll dive into real life firm strategies, how to charge more, work less, use better tech, and move up the advisory ladder. So, whether you're tired of compliance chaos or you just want to scale without burning out, this show gives you the tools, the stories, and templates to do it smarter. So, subscribe, hit the bell, and join the other accountants who are working smarter, scaling faster, and building the lifestyle firm they actually want. Not every client will see your value unless you show them. Some business owners, they get it and they value the strategy, they want the guidance, and they're happy to pay for it. They're almost surprised you didn't ask for it. I ran into that too, good clients. But then there are these other clients, the ones that are kind of, like I said, stuck in that old school status quo, how they've been dealing with their taxes and their accountant relationship in the past. They just want the compliance only work, but they kind of creep into, scope creep you into asking these little extra things because these things are coming up. I need help with my, BOI. Can you help me? And can you explain that to me? I mean, that's time. Of course, that's not a high level advisory thing, but it's outside of the scope of what we're including. So, also I'm working on getting a loan and I need your help with just telling me the best route I should take. I mean, that is outside of doing compliance work. And instead of having to have that conversation, what we've implemented is having a subscription where you get access to that kind of stuff. Now, there can be change orders to that, and there's different, levels of service for different people. But, sometimes clients are coming to you, they just want that compliance work and they expect a little bump in fee. And if you go to something like double the next year, it's a big shock to their system. So guess what happened next with that client when I offered them my advisory service? I came to them and said, hey, you get it. They got it for free in the past, but I'm not going to keep making the same price of undercharging my expertise. So when it was presented to them, they weren't receptive to it. So guess what? Terminated. They didn't think I would do it, but client terminated, and sometimes that's a lesson learned for me, is that I knew the value I was bringing to the table and brought for them and thought that I would get paid on the back end for it. And no, with my new clients and the client that I replaced them with, more times over, they were properly qualified. We sold them an advisory service and then they get that. So it's more of like, looking inward and saying, did I offer this the wrong way? Did I just kind of, back myself into a corner of having to do that? And just because I got kind of caught off guard. So that's what I'm here to show you guys here on the Scaling Smart podcast, is to have your advisory packages kind of ready if you are a compliance only firm. Start to know what that looks like so that you're not afraid to have those quick conversations if a client reaches out to you with something out of the blue. That's how these advisory things come up. They kind of come up out of the blue. Hey, I'm working on a loan. Hey, I'm working on this transaction and I could use a little bit of your help with, not only just a copy of the return, but hey, what else is this about? That kind of thing. So if I knew that a client had to go out and get that same level of service that I delivered to them, I knew they wouldn't have got it, or they would have probably had to pay the right price, top dollar, for somebody who was capable of doing what I did for them. So, lesson learned. You got to see what's out there. And you know what? That was my bad. I didn't structure it correctly. So I'm here to share. And on the Scaling Smart podcast, you're going to get some more of that kind of stuff so you don't make the same mistake. Don't be overworked and underpaid. So here's how you avoid it. Price your services correctly up front. Set expectations before taking on additional work. And never assume that your clients know the value between the different services that you're doing. Sometimes they just don't, they're not going to ask. So be ready for pricing conversations when they happen, because no matter how urgent that, thing that they need you to deal with, no matter how much they need just some quick advice, you have to know your value. So, if you've ever been caught off guard, worked for free, or just didn't realize that other accountants are charging for work that you're doing, this episode was for you. Thank you for checking out my stuff. I definitely want to hear from you, your feedback. Next time, we're going to be talking about things like getting better clients, better technology, ones that are actually happy to pay you for what you do, and how you can shortcut, automate, and just do all these amazing things nowadays. So, again, hit subscribe and let's go to work.